Well, if you've been a fan of Triple Crown Racing for a while, this may not have been on your 2025 bingo card, and if you're new to the channel, this likely won't make sense to you at all. But we are back. Hello everybody, my name is Jack MacKenzie, and joining me on the mic is the wonderful Chris Whitfield and Caitlin Penny commentary, and for the first time in 5 years, albeit with a slight name change, you are listening to the Motorsport Recently Show. Well guys, I know. Cheers from Caitlin. Thank you very much. Great way to open the show. It'd be fantastic if we had a studio audience to bring us in. Well, guys, it's not our first time podcasting together, that's for sure, but it's certainly our first time together in a very long time. And for those of you that know, we used to do a show together called Motorsport Recently, and then we stopped it for a while, and now it's back. And I want to make this a thing for 2025 at least, and hopefully for the rest of time. So obviously not been podcasting together for a little while, but we have podcasted before. It's been 5 years. Caitlin Penny, what have you been up to?
I have been preparing for this very moment the entire time. I have been living, eating, and breathing Motorsport Recently. I've been doing my own thing. I'm still commentating. I still commentate my sim racing. I'm still doing GPWC, which is the league that I commentate. I've been doing that for like 7 years now. I have been running my own YouTube channel and my own show, the Random F1 Race Views series that I just started when we last did this podcast, has now been running for 5 years, which I'm very excited about, and I'm not slowing down anytime soon. In terms of my personal life, a lot of random stuff has happened. Obviously, a lot has happened in the world, COVID, etc. I've got a girlfriend now. She's very sweet. And I'm an adult, not a little kid like I was last. I wasn't a little kid. You know what I mean.
We do know what you mean, yes.
We've all grown up since last time we recorded this, and life does life things. But I'm so glad that we have stayed in contact, guys. And I'm excited to be back.
Thank you very much, Caitlin. That all makes sense. I mean, well, obviously things haven't really changed very much on your end, still doing commentary and all those sorts of things. Chris Whitfield, have things been more drastically changing on your side of things?
Well, I've traveled to a few states. I've been on a couple of airplanes, and I've had COVID before, which I highly recommend not doing. It's not something I would recommend.
I thought you were going to recommend it for a second there. I was like, what?
5 stars.
5 stars, would do again, yes. No.
And I'm eating the official food of Bubba Wallace, McDonald's.
We're not sponsored in any way, by the way, except through Google AdSense for the channel. Yes, yet. If you would like to sponsor this, based on everything that you've heard so far, feel free to get in touch. So, Chris Whitfield, very much the same by the sounds of it on your end of things, and also we will get to COVID very soon, because one of the focuses of this episode will actually be motor racing in the last 5 years since we went off the air. I've had a few things happen in my life, a few very exciting things happen since we went off the air. First and foremost, despite living on the other sides of the globe, Caitlin and I actually managed to meet in real life about 1.5 years ago.
We did. It was in London. You were a bit more proactive than me and decided to travel halfway across the globe with your friend. I'm sure you can tell us more about that trip soon. We met up in London. It was a lovely day. We went to a little restaurant. It was some kind of chicken place. This isn't very interesting, but I have actually passed that place a few times since then, and I think of you every time, Jack. And then we went go-karting in Canary Wharf. There was a lovely underground track called Capital Karts that we spent about 3 hours looking for because it's super hidden. Turns out it's on level -4. You go into the lift and you click on -4. When do you ever do that? So yeah, we were properly like underground. I felt like a little womble racing around under there.
Felt like a wobble. What a comparison! That's fantastic. Oh man.
Well, I mean it's London, so Wimbledon's not that far away. Um, but yes, we don't have to talk about the result. That's neither here nor there. It was just very nice that I got to meet up with you, Jack. And then we went to good old Weatherspoons for a cheeky spoons and some drinks.
We certainly did, and we definitely did not get shown up by my friend who had no racing experience outside of hire karting at all. Speaking of which, I have also started my own racing in the last 5 years. I now do endurance karting in a series called Sportsman Endurance Karting or Sportsman Enduro Karting, and now travel the wonderful state of New South Wales in Australia, racing karts with varying degrees of success. But aside from that, I am now, I think, qualified as a journalist, which is good. So that'll make me all the more qualified to actually do a motorsport news podcast, which, by the way, this is a motorsport news podcast, although you might not have guessed that, considering everything else that we've talked about so far. But we will be getting into some motorsport news eventually in this episode. And I think, aside from doing YouTube, that just about covers me. So really, some things in our lives have changed, but also many things have not. Does anyone else have anything they'd like to add on that front?
I do like how generic that was. Like, yeah, some things have changed, some things haven't. I mean, that's kind of what you'd expect, isn't it? What was the point of this? Nah, it's okay.
Know. It does sound a bit like a TV trailer. It's just like, some things are different, some things are the same. It's the same old show. Reboot. Well, this is what it is. It's a reboot. That's what we're doing. A perfect trailer for a reboot.
It's live action this time, so you'll buy it, even though it's no different than the original. We've done it shot for shot, and you're stupid enough to give us money for it.
And all I got was this lousy T-shirt.
Oh, God. Okay. Well, okay, so I think, besides our own lives, I'd say that the most interesting things that have happened in the last 5 years that are relevant to this show have happened in the world of motorsport. Obviously, the last episode air date for Motorsport Recently was the 22nd of December 2019, which is a little over 5 years ago. So I thought we'd maybe take the time to talk about some of the biggest changes that have happened in the world of racing. Would anybody like to open us up with this one?
Where do we start? Oh my goodness.
Well,
I was going to suggest maybe the rise of Formula One in the last few years.
Ooh, I like Formula One. I can talk about Formula One. That's kind of my thing. Yeah, so Formula One obviously has had a big boom. The global fan base has pretty much doubled, especially in young people, and this is due to a certain Netflix show called Drive to Survive. Drive to Survive was already a thing when we last did Motorsport Recently, but it hadn't quite had the breakout success just yet that it would end up experiencing. I think COVID, tale as old as time, changed everything. Everyone was indoors, everyone was like, I've watched literally everything on Netflix, what else is there? Oh, Formula One? Okay, I guess. And then suddenly you've got, thousands more Formula One fans. We saw that in particular at the United States Grand Prix a few years ago, where for the first time ever they reached their absolute capacity in Austin, Texas. And unfortunately, it means that ticket prices have been absolutely soaring in Grand Prix. There's no chance that I'll get to go to one anytime soon. But it also means, of course, that the sport now has so many more eyes on it. That has, of course, led to some controversy. There have been some instances where it's kind of seemed like the sport has been a little performative. Abu Dhabi 2021, I'm sort of glad we didn't have Motorsport Recently at the time, because I think that might have been a bit of a heated episode. But yeah. In better news, the Mercedes domination era finally ended, and then we got a Red Bull domination era instead. But 2024, honestly, one of the best seasons that I remember in Formula One, and definitely one of the most underrated as well. It's a season where pretty much no one could predict anything that happened, and some cars would be quick at some tracks, some cars would be quick at others. We ended up with 7 different drivers for 4 different teams winning races, and all of them won multiple races. So okay, the sport may not be in a great place politically, but I think that what we've got going on the track is a very, very positive thing, and actually significantly better than it was back in 2019.
That's fantastic, and it is great to see the rise of a sport that at some times we don't love, but we do love the vast majority of the time, which I think is important. And the growth between the start of this decade and the middle of the decade, where we are right now, which is why this conversation is relevant, has been very impressive. However, there have been some important developments in the world of tin tops. Big changes in the world of sports car racing, which sports car racing was in a bit of an interesting point in its sort of life cycle when we last did this show, and Chris is very enthusiastic to speak.
I'll handle that. In 2021, there was a major regulation change in not only IMSA, but also WEC, in that the convergence happened between prototype classes. So LMH, or Le Mans Hybrid, Le Mans Hypercar, and LMDH, Le Mans Daytona Hypercar, combined to form one class, and they've just gone from strength to strength. They have produced, for my money, the best shows I think I've ever seen. From Bahrain to Qatar to Sebring, which we lost, to Le Mans and Daytona, we've just seen monumental growth. And also, not only that, but also manufacturers have joined. We've had, along with Toyota, we've had Porsche, Ferrari with that beautiful 499P, which, we've had Alpine join, Acura, Cadillac, Lamborghini. Have I mentioned Porsche?
But you haven't mentioned my baby, Assetto Fraschini.
I was just about to mention Assetto Fraschini, or Assetto Franchise.
Assetto Franchise, I like that the best. I think that's what we've got to call it. That's going to be what that manifests. Because I think I remember doing a video where I mentioned the name of the Assetto franchise, and I got pulled up for pronunciation. But I don't remember what the correct pronunciation of it was now.
Assetto Fraschini.
Assetto Fraschini. Okay, well, that was very... I think that pronunciation there was on point, and doing the hand gestures is the important part of that.
Assetto Fraschini. You got to do the hand gestures.
Honestly, if you say anything with enough vigor, it sounds Italian. So I think, the pronunciation doesn't matter. You just have to be passionate about it.
Absolutely. Oh man, goodness me. But yeah, I think you are certainly right, Chris. The interest in sports car racing has been fantastic, and it's one of the things that's actually benefited this channel that we are going to be on. Well, for our YouTube viewers, we're going to be on, because when we were doing this show originally, I think sports car racing was floundering a little bit, but then I've been able to actually capitalize on a few developments that have happened in the world of sports car racing, and there's been this massive interest in it. So I think you are right. We certainly are in a golden era of sports car racing. I think it's only going to get better because we've got new manufacturers coming in this year and the next couple of years. We've got Aston Martin coming in with the Valkyrie this year. We've got Genesis coming in as well. And I think there's a few others on the way as well, which is all very, very exciting. Phil Collins is going to be there
as well.
Who's going to be there, sorry?
Phil Collins is going to be there as well.
Very good, very good, very good.
Wait, no, that must be some misunderstanding. That must be some kind of mistake.
Very, very true. Very true. I knew we wouldn't get through. We wouldn't get through one of these episodes, especially a bit of reunion tour, without a Genesis reference. It had to happen. So that's prototype racing, but I think GT racing, some of the lower classes, there's been some big changes there as well.
Yes, most of the WEC has, unfortunately, we've had to say goodbye to the GTE class. But what a way to go out with our favorite Iron Dames winning in a Porsche GTE car. But now, that class is now merged into LMGT3 using the GT3 regs, which is pretty commonplace nowadays, but we've also had some new manufacturers there as well. We've had Ford with the Mustang Dark Horse. Help me out here. What else is joined in?
I don't know. Sorry.
Well, we've had a lot of model changes as well. So we've had stuff like the Ferrari 296 come in. That's a new car. So that's a V6 Ferrari as opposed to some of the V8 Ferraris of old. I think also GT3 has brought new sort of manufacturers into the WEC that weren't in there before. So Lamborghini has been in there, McLaren's there, Lexus is there. And we're also going to have Mercedes finally make their debut in the WEC in the not too distant future. So that's all going to be very exciting.
And Ford. Don't forget Ford.
I think we did mention Ford. Yeah, Ford's there. Oh, and I know Corvette was already in the WEC, although they have sort of upped their commitment on that front. Oh, Lexus. If I hadn't mentioned Lexus, I probably have mentioned Lexus already. I'm just going round and round in circles here. Fantastic. Yeah, no, that's. Do you reckon there's been? Do you reckon? I'd say probably sports car racing and Formula One. Those are the two most radical changes that have happened in the world of motor racing. But do you think there's any? Do you think there's any changes in other series that have been as significant as those?
Well, sorry, Chris. Obviously, sim racing had a massive boom during COVID because no one could go out of their houses to see actual racing. The actual racing, if it did happen, was happening behind closed doors, and a lot of the time just wasn't happening anyway. So sim racing became absolutely huge, and you had a lot of real world drivers getting involved, even drivers who you wouldn't expect, like friggin' Emerson Fittipaldi got involved with the races sim competitions, and the actual NASCAR Cup field did NASCAR iRacing that was shown live on national television and stuff like that. I think the most interesting thing for me is how that kind of momentum didn't keep up, or didn't kind of, it didn't evolve into any sort of momentum that would last a bit longer. I feel like a lot of the people who we saw getting into sim racing around about that time didn't stick with it, and as soon as they could go back to the real world of racing, they very much did. And yeah, I'm sure if you looked at the numbers, there are probably more sim racers now, more active sim racers now than there were before. But in all honesty, I was sort of expecting sim racing to end up being on par with the real world of racing in terms of popularity. I was expecting sim racers to be given titles like world champion and all that, and that kind of momentum just never really kept up, and it's almost like everyone's sort of forgotten that era a bit. So I guess it still, I guess it shows that you still do need that real life anchor to base these things on, and it's still necessary to bolt your real life fleshy form into a car and hurl it around a racetrack. to keep the crowds entertained.
Well, I can assure you, Caitlin, that not all hope is lost on that front, because we do actually have a sim racing story later on in the show. So that's going to be very exciting. Stick around for that one. Chris, do you have any other changes you'd care to mention?
Well, actually, first of all, on the sim racing thing, something happened in 2020 during the pandemic.
A lot of things did.
Yes, and nothing happened all at the same time. But
Yep.
there was a stream that took place at the Monza Oval.
Right.
Oh, no, I think we should gloss over that one. No, everybody behave, stay calm. I would like to gloss over that subject. I do have a better stream we can talk about.
But in fairness, the fact
Lower
that,
your finger, Mr. Whitfield.
the fact that he fully recovered from that and redeemed himself, he took all the necessary. This, of course, being Kyle Larson, for those that don't know. He said a word you can't really say. Ever. And he took all the necessary sensitivity training and everything. If anything, he actually elevated his career further up, because he went from Chip Ganassi from Ganassi at the time to Hendrick Motorsports, and he's won a championship because of that. In the number 5 HendrickCars.com Chevrolet. So, and also, this is actually part of it. The car he was driving was actually the 7th gen NASCAR Cup Series car. The next gen, as it were, which has had an okay rollout. It's had some design flaws for sure, but it's also produced some pretty good racing, especially on road and street courses, which is also part of the reason why we're starting to take drivers from Jack's area.
Yes,
that's
very true. I will also mention a couple of things. We are going to come back we're going to mention Kyle Larson also later in the show for a completely different reason. Relating that to the sim racing conversation, there was also another stream that happened in 2020. That was the 24 Hours of Le Mans Virtual, which spawned the Le Mans Series Virtual, which I believe was slightly ill-fated, but I was still very much enjoyed that whilst it existed. As for what's going on my part of the world, we have obviously lost Shane Van Gisbergen from this part of the world. If you don't know, I am based in Australia. Supercars has also changed their cars since we last did the show. So we're now on a new platform down here, racing the Chevrolet Camaro and the Ford Mustang, as opposed to the Ford Falcons and Commodores of old, and also the sort of old platform Ford Mustang, which was stretched across a Ford Falcon chassis. So that was all very interesting. But yes, so there have definitely been some major changes in the last 5 years. Motorsport is a very fast-moving field, evidently.
Unintended?
One thing... Oh, yes. That pun... Well, you know what? No, I'm taking credit for that one. I'll have that. I absolutely meant that. That is intellectual genius at play in a semi-live setting. We're not actually
we'll have
live.
That and like it.
Yes, that is true. Yes. I planned that as evident. Something that actually hasn't changed as much as I sort of thought it might have in the last 5 years is IndyCar. Now, it hasn't actually been... What are you sobbing about? IndyCar's always been fantastic. But anyway, so there have been a couple of changes in IndyCar. Obviously, we've got the hybrid system now. We've got the aero screen. But largely, aside from calendar changes and driver changes and team changes, which is to be expected.
What calendar changes?
Well, there's new races and things like that. We've got Nashville and all that sort of stuff. But it is more or less the same series that we were covering all those years ago. However, And this actually gives us the opportunity to transition to our major story for this episode, is that there has been a major change, a team change that has been developing in the last few years, but it now has fully come to fruition in the last few days. And that is Arrow McLaren, or McLaren Racing, has now bought out 100% of the Arrow McLaren IndyCar team, which in the last few years, they have been taking over from Schmidt Peterson Motorsports.
It will be sad to not see Sam Schmidt in the paddock area after all he's done, and after all he's done in the sport. And yes, it's actually, I personally think that Zach Brown, I think he's trying to prime himself to take over the series from Roger
Really?
Penske, because in fairness, Roger Penske's leadership is really going nowhere. He bought the Speedway, he bought the series. All he did was he basically kept everyone from the old Hullman and Company. All he did was change the name of the door and advance his teams up the grid.
Fair enough then. That big claims on that front, but I think we should maybe go through some of the changes that have happened at Schmidt Peterson Motorsports in the last couple of years, and then maybe talk a bit about how sort of McLaren have been expanding their portfolio a little bit in the world of racing. So McLaren bought into Schmidt Peterson Motorsport in 2019 ahead of the 2020 season, before buying 75% of the team in 2021. So initially, that team was Arrow McLaren SP. So SP standing for Schmidt Peterson. That's the combination of Sam Schmidt and Rick Peterson, as they were the previous owners of that team. And the Arrow part obviously refers to the Arrow Electronics company, which had been a previous sponsor of the team in the years prior, when it was Schmidt Peterson Motorsports. Caitlin, do you have anything you'd like to say on sort of McLaren's growth as an organization in the last couple of years?
I think it's really telling on how ready the automotive industry as a whole is for McLaren. What McLaren represents, of course, is kind of the underdogs coming through. They are a very big company, in all honesty, but they kind of play the underdog role. You know, we see that in Formula One, where Mercedes have had their period of dominance and Red Bull have had their period of dominance, and McLaren, you know, the old dogs of the grid, one of the last teams that, you know, started off as a privateer entry. Not that you can really call them that anymore. You know, coming through and turning the tides and winning the Constructors' Championship this year for the first time since 1998. And I don't think it's a coincidence that the brand itself seems to be expanding into other motorsports and other areas at the same time as they've had this success in Formula One. You know, I'm familiar with Extreme E, which is actually another thing that's changed in the world of motorsports in the last 5 years. Extreme E is a thing now. You know, I'm familiar with McLaren and their exploits in that, for example, and they've been involved in sim racing, and obviously they've been gradually expanding in IndyCar, and it's far from the days. You know, when McLaren first went to IndyCar, I thought it was all just a big, you know, a big show to get Fernando Alonso to drive for them, and you know, have Alonso win the Indy 500 in a McLaren or whatever. But that was a long time ago. Gone are the days of Nando Watch, and I personally am very here for McLaren's growth. Congratulations to them.
Well, actually, if you want to mention McLaren's involvement in Extreme E, I'll jump across quickly to Formula E. They're involved in Formula E as well, and they're currently leading the teams championship at the moment with a third and fourth at Sao Paulo. That was Taylor Barnard. That really young guy racing for McLaren. He had a fantastic race at Sao Paulo. But do you want to tell us a little bit about their Extreme E exploits?
Off the top of my head, I'm struggling. I mean, I can look something up for you real quick. But Taylor Barnard, I tell you what, I remember him karting. This is completely irrelevant to McLaren. This is nothing to do with McLaren at all. But Taylor Barnard, what a legend! You guys missed out if you didn't see him karting. You know, I was speaking to. Okay, this is way too much of a tangent. I'm sorry, but yeah, no, I like Taylor Barnard. Just that's what you should take from this.
Taylor Barnard. I'd actually be genuinely surprised if Taylor Barnard is not seen in a Formula One car at some point in the near future. I was so impressed by his drive at Sao Paulo. I will say, I did actually watch Formula E for the first time in a really long time. I watched the Sao Paulo season opener. I really, really thoroughly enjoyed it. To be honest, I wasn't really sure of the state of the series of Formula E, but I was really, really impressed by that season opener, and I think everybody should give Formula E and its current guise a try.
I disagree, but that's just me being grumpy old woman shouts at cloud.
Fair enough.
I will say, though, on the McLaren thing, the IndyCar side of things has been, well, nothing short of excellent. Like, Pato O'Ward has just, like, his stock has gone up quite a bit, to the point where there actually is talk of perhaps getting another race in Mexico, thanks to Pato. There's also Marcus Ericsson has won races for them. Oh yes, forgot to tell you this in the recap. Marcus Ericsson has won an Indy 500.
Yes,
He has. That is very true.
He's an IndyCar winner, and now he's with Andretti. What else? Oh, I forgot who the other two drivers are.
For this year at McLaren?
Oh,
or like
yes.
or
'Cause it
people
went
that
from-
have moved over from Formula One?
For McLaren.
It's Nolan Siegel and Christian Lundgaard who will be driving for them this year in 2025. Which, by the way, what is very scary is... So I'm 22 now, and Nolan Siegel is younger than me. He just turned 20. I need to lock in this season of karting if I want to advance my career as much as he has. I need to catch up. I need to catch up to Taylor Barnard. I need to catch up to Nolan Siegel. I've got to win. I've just got to win this year in karting if I really want to get in there, because I'm falling behind. I'm struggling. I have to lock in this year. It's really important.
Well, I tell you what, Jack. I felt an immense sense. Like, I don't like to focus on the fact that we're all slowly getting older, because like that happens, right? But like, I do have to admit that I was disappointed when Oliver Behrman made his F1 debut last year. Because he was the first Formula One driver born after me, and also the first Formula One driver born after you. And it kind of like,
but
I don't know,
not the first born after me.
Yeah, we
no,
know.
I'm afraid not, Chris. Yes, that would probably have been Jaime Alguersuari potentially, just based on dates. But
Hang on,
anyway,
wait. So is Fernando? Wait, hang on. Are you, Chris? Are you older than Fernando Alonso?
yes, because Fernando would have been like.
How old is Fernando Alonso?
He was 19 when he joined the grid in 2001.
Yeah, he was like 20.
Okay, no, yes. So Fernando Alonso is older than Chris. So yeah, so Chris sits. Actually, what's the closest Formula One driver to you in age? Sorry, I feel like I'm just bullying Chris.
I've sent you on a
"Ah,
tangent
you're
now."
old. God.
No, but Jack, just to complete my point quickly, not only do we have Oliver Behrman to worry about now, but Andrea Kimi Antonelli and Isaac Hadjar were
Oh,
both
gosh.
also born after us.
Right, when we finish recording today, I'm off to buy a walking stick because that's how old I currently feel now. But actually, I do want to move on. Actually, this has been a bit of a tangent. Chris mentioned Pato O'Ward, and I do actually want to talk about Pato O'Ward for a second because he has been crucial to sort of the McLaren story in IndyCar, like since they're really sort of committed to the series in the last few years, because obviously McLaren have had forays into the world of IndyCar racing before. So in the second year after McLaren came on board at Schmidt Peterson Motorsports, this was 2021, Pato O'Ward was within definite contention to win the IndyCar championship. So going into the final race, I think it was Long Beach was the final race of 2021. He was second
Yes.
in the championship, properly in the box seat, going up against Alex Palou to fight for the championship. But I think he got crashed into at the hairpin, which took him out of championship contention, if memory serves me correctly on that front. So he ended up finishing third. But even still, that was Schmidt Peterson, the kind of Schmidt Peterson Motorsport team's best result since Simon Pagenaud had finished third in the IndyCar Championship in 2013, whereas before they'd sort of struggled to get drivers into the top 10 and the top 5. So it was really quite impressive to see how quick the McLaren influence had an impact on Schmidt Peterson Motorsport. Not that Schmidt Peterson Motorsport was a bad team by any stretch of the imagination, but they basically took that team from an outfit that would sometimes get good results to a team that was then fighting for the championship. Because something that I find quite interesting is that in the IndyCar Championship, you have to go back to 2002 before you find a championship winner that wasn't driving for Andretti, Chip Ganassi, or Penske. So really, there were only 3 main contenders in the world of IndyCar for championships, and now I think there's realistically 4. So on that front, Chris, do you think that Zach Brown and McLaren have been? Do you think that's sort of a reflection of the stewardship that they've shown towards that team so far?
Well, actually, I'm about to inject a little bit of irony here. When we actually did this podcast before, McLaren, Fernando Alonso, along with Pato O'Ward, were both on the DNQ list for the 500, for the Indy 500.
That's very true. I remember that was a big story that we did that year, actually. Obviously being bumped out of the Indianapolis 500 by Juncos and Kyle Kaiser, which that went down in history, didn't it?
Yeah. Well, the thing is, like, Zach Brown, I'm mixed about him, like, as far as, like, the whole Alex Palou thing kind of rubbed me the wrong way as far as the contracts and the like. But at the same time, it was basically, I respect what he does in the sport, if that makes sense. Like,
Yeah.
like his contribution to the sport. The fact that he isn't afraid to speak his mind, especially about matters like matters relating to Mr. Penske and his series ownership. And
No
things
resentment
like that.
there at all, by the sounds of things.
Yeah, it's like, and he's got good drivers if he can keep them. Like, the thing is, Zach Brown hires all good drivers. It's like that episode of Seinfeld. You know how to take the reservation, you just don't know how to hold the reservation. And that is the most important thing about the reservation. It's like, you need to, you know how to take the drivers, You just don't know how to hold the drivers. And that's the most important thing. But with Zach and Pato and
Christian Lundgaard, yeah.
Yeah,
And Nolan Siegel.
Yeah, Siegel. Nolan Siegel's actually really impressed me this year. In the number 6 car, it's a shame that Alexander Rossi couldn't win with McLaren this year, but hopefully he'll do well with Ed Carpenter in 2025. And yeah, fingers crossed. Hopefully Pato can get a couple of victories, because his drive at Milwaukee was just, oof. Chef's kiss. Was absolutely brilliant.
So what do you think of the So obviously Pato O'Ward goes without saying, exceptional driver, probably the perfect driver for that team at the moment. But what do you think of? I think so. Christian Lundgaard is a new addition to that team for this year. How do you think he's going to do?
I think really well. He's got Brian Barnhart as strategist, I believe. If I remember correctly, Brian's staying with McLaren, and he's got a good team behind him, and remember, he's won a race before. He won at Toronto, actually, in 2023.
I think you'd probably be
plus,
right.
I believe he has the Hy-Vee sponsorship. He brought the Hy-Vee sponsorship over to he brought the Hy-Vee sponsorship over from Rahal to McLaren.
McLaren, yes. Do you reckon McLaren will be in championship contention this year, or do you think it's going to be a Penske or Ganassi show again this year?
In the beginning, yes. They sort of seem to have they seem to either start slow. By May, I think Pato's gonna contend for the 500. That's my bold prediction.
He should have won. McLaren drops off. So McLaren drops off at the start of the season in IndyCar as well as Formula One.
No, what they do is they have like a little bit of a slump in the summertime, and then they bring it back up a little bit. Every team does that, but I think Pato. I really want Pato O'Ward to win the Indy 500 this year. I think he's. As much as I resent saying it, I liked the battle between him and Joseph Newgarden last year. It's a shame that the wrong guy won, but I have to respect that drive by Joseph. But I think they could. I think they'll contend for wins this year for sure. But as for championship contention, it's hard to bet against Alex Palou, isn't it? Like Alex Palou or Scott Dixon or any of the Penskes, really.
Now, I won't claim to know this off the top of my head because I did have to look it up, but no cheating from either one of the two of you. I
don't have push to pass.
God. When was McLaren's last Indy 500 win?
I'm going to say 1973.
73 for Caitlin? Chris, what do you think?
I think it was 1976.
Chris is exactly on the money with 1976. That was McLaren's last win. Well done. Well done.
Who was it? Who took it?
Let's see if I can find out 1976 when I'm definitely knowing this off the top of my head. It was Johnny Rutherford. Easy for me to say. Wow, goodness me. Goodness me. And then
Who, by the way, Lone Star JR is, believe, still part of the pace car team for IndyCar. It's him, Sarah Fisher, and Oriol Servia.
Okay. Wow. So I think that just about sort of covers the McLaren Schmidt Peterson Motorsport story. So I think the general consensus is going to be a bit of a shame to see Sam Schmidt and Rick Peterson go, but ultimately the McLaren ownership is pretty good for that team, all things considered. Does anyone have any sort of contradictory thoughts on that front?
Well, not contradictory, but I will say, as someone who's a little bit of an outsider, like I'm very into IndyCar. I love it, but I don't know so much about the behind the scenes stuff. Zach Brown to me seems a lot like, and this isn't exactly a compliment for me to give someone, but he seems a lot like Christian Horner, where he's extremely outspoken, and even if you don't like the guy, you kind of have to respect him for what he does. I don't know. I feel like I see him in the same light as Christian Horner. Probably not great people, but they get the job done, you know?
Follow up to that, actually, I think he's actually a little like Tom Walkinshaw, in that he has
Okay.
his fingers in a lot of pies.
Yes, that's very true, actually. That is very true.
He's got the IndyCar program, he's got the F1 program, he's got GT cars with United Autosports, he's got Extreme H, which is the replacement of Extreme E.
I was gonna say, sorry, I went on a bit of a tangent just now about Extreme E, and you asked me about it, and I looked it up, and this shows me, this is why I need the show. I'm totally out of the loop in the world of motorsports. Extreme E just kind of folded mid-season. It's gone by the look of it.
That's strange.
Yeah, they cancelled the last 3 races, and they were saying, "Oh, we're looking at alternative ways of completing the season," but it's gone the way of the W Series, you know?
Yeah. There's also, actually, I should mention on the subject of Zach Brown, there's also the Supercars program here in Australia as well. He's involved in that. Is there ever missed anything that
Is it Walkinshaw Andretti United?
Walkinshaw Andretti United, so currently a Ford team, but my understanding is the intention is to switch to Toyota in the not too distant future.
Yep.
With
That'll
the
be a
Supra.
big get. That'll be a big get.
Which says to me that there's going to be a new... I believe there's a new Supra in the works, because it didn't really make sense to me, the fact that Toyota was coming into the Supercars series when they were as soon as they were discontinuing the Mark V Supra. So that didn't really make a lot of sense to me. But I think that just about covers the McLaren story. And I think we'll probably move on to some miscellaneous stories. Now, I was putting together a list of miscellaneous stories.
Caitlin's eyes just lit up.
Wait.
Yes, and I remembered we had on the old show a segment for this.
You don't mean miscellaneous points. You mean, and Chris, you got to do it with me. 3, 2, 1. Miscellaneous stories and points that we missed and therefore are covering now. TM. Go on, Chris. No. There's you forgot the
sound effect.
Ding. We literally had a jingle for that. And Jack, I'm very much hoping you ask me to make some more jingles for this show, because I totally will.
I do actually
We're going to probably have a soundboard for our devoted listeners.
I think there has to be. But really, for this show, what I want is I want more jingles, probably a few different jingles to the one we had before, because we'll probably have some different segments. I reckon we get jingles, segments. We want guests as well. I'm thinking we get Lewis Hamilton on next week, so that'll be very exciting. Talk about Ferrari.
It's Sir Lewis Hamilton.
Sir Lewis Hamilton. My apologies, very unprofessionally. I reckon Sir Lewis Hamilton. We'll have him on next week, and we'll have Roger Penske and Chris Whitfield on a debate show the following week. So yes, we do have some miscellaneous stories and points that we missed and therefore covering now, TM Bing. And we'll actually, to keep the McLaren theme going, this is a very McLaren-themed story, episode of Motorsport Recently this week. Other manufacturers are available. So a bit of driver change news. So Darren Lung and Sean Gelael will be moving from WRT BMW to the United Autosports McLaren, the number 95 car in the FIA WEC, and they'll be partnering Marino Sato for that one. So that driver pairing that's being carried over from the BMW team. I believe that team is still empty at the moment. I think Augusto Farfus is the only confirmed driver on the BMW team in the World Endurance Championship at the moment. So those two drivers, Lung Gelael and Sato, that's going to make up McLaren 95 for the 2025 season. Other sports car driver. Actually, does anybody have anything they'd like to mention on the WEC driver change news?
Well, first of all, I should have had my bucket of KFC chicken.
Yes, you went with the wrong fast food joint for this episode.
It was the only thing I had. I just literally got off work. Every time I think of Sean Gelael, I of course have that sound clip from Josh Revel.
Yep.
The great Sean Gelael. Bruh. But no, he's been pretty solid in LMP2, and it's also been pretty good in the BMWs. I could see him winning a couple of races with McLaren next year in WEC.
Yeah, I'm not sure how good a KFC logo will look against the McLaren orange color of the
Well, that just means they'd have to have papaya flavored chicken.
That's true. Papaya. They could do a promotional event for that one. Chris is the thinking man. Thank you very much,
Can
Chris.
I have my money now?
Yes, KFC. If you'd like to sponsor this show, we will happily wear KFC buckets in next week's episode.
Yes.
Caitlin, you'll be happy. We've got actually no. There's one more sports car story I want to do before we move on. There is a Formula One story, so that will be very exciting. Oh, and I forgot to mention, actually, on the McLaren front, Kyle Larson will be racing for them again. That's when I mentioned that Kyle Larson was going to be mentioned. I thought I forgot to mention him. So there he is. There's the mention.
He impressed me a lot at the 500 this year. Then again, Kyle Larson, I think, can drive anything. Before the whole thing happened with during the pandemic, he actually, keep in mind, he won the Chili Bowl. He won the Chili Bowl. His first time, he won the Chili Bowl in 20, he won the Chili Bowl in 21. He's back in 2025 at the Chili Bowl, and I think he may be one of the favorites to win, honestly. Not only the Cup Series Championship, but also the Chili Bowl, and possibly run well in the 500.
That's probably a fair assessment, yeah. Anyway, we do have one more sports car story to cover. So Jimmy Bruni will be moving over to JDC Miller Motorsport in the 963, the yellow car,
the banana
in
boat.
the IMSA WeatherTech, the banana boat in the IMSA WeatherTech Sports Car Championship. After his Porsche factory drive was not renewed, but he will still be driving a Porsche in 2025.
Good old Jimmy Bruni. Great to see that he's still going, in all honesty.
Yeah.
That's technically a very broad, Formula One adjacent story, considering Jimmy Bruni, of course, former Minardi driver.
Mm-hmm. Scored a point, if I remember correctly, with Minardi.
I think he did. Hungarian Grand Prix, if that rings a bell.
Yeah.
Well, what year did he do Formula One?
2004.
Yes,
2004.
Great memory.
Fair enough. That's why you guys are on the show.
Actually,
you guys are walking
both Minardis,
encyclopedias.
I think, scored a point, if I remember correctly.
Good year for Minardi.
Because he whose name shall never be mentioned also scored a point at That's a GP Rejects message board reference, but deep cut. But
Yes. Although, unfortunately, we were wrong about him scoring a point because his best,
Oh.
his best result was 14th. Ugh.
jeez.
Did he do the full season for
Yeah, he
Minardi, or was
did.
it just a
He
handful? Oh,
he did.
14th.
Minardi just sucked, but there we go.
Not a great year for Minardi.
I
Also,
love how
um,
we've immediately gone
should
back
be-
on that.
It should be noted also that his co-driver with in the banana boat this year is Tymon Vanderhelm, who is honestly is a very quick young driver, and I think he's got a very bright future ahead of him. Perhaps maybe a Porsche factory drive in the pipeline for him, but yeah, he's impressed me quite a bit in that number 85 car.
Moving on from Formula One adjacent stories, we move on to an actual Formula One story. So Tag Heuer has become the official watch partner for Formula One, replacing Rolex.
Great. I guess we'll just have to watch what happens with that one.
Oh, there we go. That's also why you guys are on the show. Great with puns. Brilliant.
Yeah, we've
Also,
always
it's a
got
return.
time. We've always got time for some more puns, my friend.
You're doing well with the puns. Great.
It's also a return, isn't it? It's also a return for Tag Heuer, because weren't they the official watch before?
Yes, they were. They had quite a long partnership before Rolex took over. Although Tyco, it's not like they disappeared from the sport. They've been involved with, they've been involved with McLaren over the years. They've been involved with Red Bull, obviously. Let's not forget, when Red Bull decided they didn't want to drive a Renault, despite having a Renault engine in their car, they decided to take the Renault badge off and put a Tag Heuer badge on it. That was, what year was that? I can't remember what year it was though.
It's 2018 from memory.
2018. There you go.
Not the only time. It might have been 2019 actually, but yeah, not the only time that's happened. Not even the only time it's happened with Tag. Back when McLaren had Tag engines, they were actually Porsches. They were just branded as such. So yeah, it was almost a bit of retro action from Red Bull when they made that deal with Tag Heuer. And to be honest, it was a mutual decision with Renault because Red Bull had spewed so much rubbish about Renault. They didn't want to be associated with Red Bull either.
I tell you
Fair
though,
enough.
the timing of this couldn't have been any better.
I made a time pun.
Timing, goodness me, we're doing well with it today. More of that to come in subsequent episodes. Now it's time. No, I'm not going to do that again. Moving on to a different story that's not related to watches or Formula One. I'm actually going to talk about Spider-Man, which actually wasn't something you'd probably expect from a show about motor
Hey, the
racing.
first one was good. The first movie with Tobey Maguire was good.
Well, we know who Chris's favorite Spider-Man is. I think my personal favorite Spider-Man. I'm going to do a bit of a left field choice here. Is Josh Keaton. But that's not who we're talking about today. We're talking about a different Spider-Man, and that would be Helio Castroneves, who will be attempting this year's Daytona 500 this year with Trackhouse and Project 91.
Yep, in the Wendy's Chevrolet. He's got sponsorship from Wendy's now.
Fantastic.
This is honestly the first I've heard of this story. I have
Broke yesterday, so that would probably make sense.
Right.
Yeah.
Honestly though, Elio, okay, the Daytona 500, it's a little bit of a lottery. Yeah, you've got to get yourself in a good position for it. But honestly, if Austin Dillon can win the Daytona 500, then Elio Castroneves sure as heck can. Wait.
And keep in mind, a lot of people forget this, but he's got super speedway experience. He's raced in, he's run in the IROC series. He did 4 starts in IROC. And he impressed there, and that certainly will help him with the plate tracks. Plus, Plus, the Trackhouse lineup is pretty stacked to begin with its main drivers, of course, being Ross Chastain in the 1, Daniel Suarez in the 99, and a certain Kiwi, I forget his name. Jack
Mentioned
might
earlier
need
in
to
the show.
help me a little bit there.
Well, I was gonna say, Elio Castroneves is not the first big name to drive a Project 91 car. So we've previously had Formula One world champion Kimi Raikkonen drive in 2022 and 2023 for the Project 91 team, and the other driver was Shane van Gisbergen from New Zealand, former Supercars driver, now full-time NASCAR driver. And he did quite well. Let's put it that way. He did quite well in his time with the 91 car. And now Elio Castroneves joins that illustrious list.
And he's the only person, I believe, he's the first person, I believe, since 1963 to win a race on debut. His first ever start, and he won the thing at the streets of Chicago.
Yes, he did, in an extremely exciting race, especially for me as well. I mean, it doesn't. To be honest with you, it doesn't really surprise me that of all the people to attempt something like that, Shane van Gisbergen was the one to do it. If you don't know who Shane van Gisbergen is, because I understand, he's still sort of emerging on the sort of international conversation in terms of motor racing, but down in this part of the world where I live, he is very much well known. He's talented in basically everything he gets behind the wheel of, and I suspect that we'll be talking about him in the world of NASCAR for many years to come.
Doesn't he also do? Doesn't he still do those banger races in his backyard with old Falcons and Camos?
Oh, it wouldn't surprise me.
With some of his mates when he goes back to New Zealand.
It would not even remotely surprise me. Anyway, we have one more story to get through today. It's a sim racing story. Sim racing story, yes!
Wow!
Okay,
I love how you're getting me excited like a toddler. This is great.
And also, it's another Formula One adjacent story, so you've got another reason to get excited.
Yes, I have one reason not to get excited, though. I am not a great Max Verstappen fan, but I do respect the guy. The story is, of course, that Max Verstappen is going to be contesting in the IMSA Esports Championship. At least, I think it's just one event, isn't it?
It's one
big
event, yeah. So he's going to be racing under the Verstappen.com banner because Redline is already represented in the team. And I understand that he's going to be driving an Acura in their final race of the season at Daytona. Sim racing, obviously, we mentioned it. It's a big part of motor racing these days. It's not going anywhere, and I believe it deserves a mention on this show. Max Verstappen finds it very important, and he's quite important in the world of racing, so we'll mention it too.
Great.
Does anybody have anything else that they would like to talk about this week?
Well, actually, there's some driver news from IMSA. Ben Barker, the endurance driver, is going to be focusing on.
And we've lost Chris Whitfield.
Yeah, sorry, Chris, you're going very muffled right now. You might want to repeat that. Well, we actually can't hear you at all right now, so. Yeah, we don't hear you.
No, okay, right. Well, I'm sure that story is very important. If it is important, we'll cover it next week. Thank you very much for listening to this episode of the Motorsport Recently Show. This is something of a pilot episode, so we'll see what you guys think. If you've got any suggestions for things you think should be added to the show and things we should cover, segment ideas, whatever it may be, please leave it in the comments on YouTube. And if I've done this correctly, this show will be on Spotify as well. My name has been Jack MacKenzie, and joining me on the mic today has been Caitlin Penny commentary, and sometimes joining us on the mic today, when his computer has allowed for it, has been the wonderful Chris Whitfield, and he's giving us some inappropriate sign language. Harking back to a story earlier in the episode, he'll need to be going to sensitivity training between now and the potential next episode. I don't know what the schedule's looking like for me personally. I think there's a couple of things going on next week, but I do want to record an episode. And if we do record an episode, I suspect it will probably be our Daytona 24-hour preview show. That's it from me. Thank you very much for joining, everybody. Like, subscribe, and we'll see you next time. Goodbye, everybody.
Ta-ta.